Hello, today is December 4th, 2017, and I want to talk about one of my books called The Hiding Seekers. So this is the book, The Hiding Seekers. I published this book about 2 years ago in 2015, and it's my 6th published book. And I just thought I would answer a few questions about the book that people have asked, and so let's get started. So question number 1, what is The Hiding Seekers about? Basically, The Hiding Seekers is about a young gay man named Jordan Pena, who is who in the beginning of the story, he graduates from high school and he has a girlfriend, but he's not happy with her because he's basically hiding in the closet. And in the beginning of the story, he comes out to his friends and then to his family. And instead of it being a positive outcome, it actually turns the opposite and takes Jordan on a different path, a different journey than what he was hoping for or seeking for. So then he basically he gets kicked out of his home. So he basically has to find a new place. And luckily, well, if you read the story, you'll find out where he lands and at the same time, there's a series of gay bashings going around in this town by a group of 5 men who call themselves the Hiding Seekers. They're a group of these thugs, street people who hate gays, and they form a gang, and basically they seek out the people who are hiding in the closet or seeking out the gay men who they hate, and that's why they call themselves the Hiding Seekers. So it's basically a Jordan story, him trying to find himself, him trying to find love, and he finds that love, but at the same time, there's a series of gay bashings going around, and it's like all blending together in this story called The Hiding Seekers. And who are the main characters? Well, obviously, Jordan Pena is the main character. He's a 18-year-old who, like I said, just graduates from high school, and he's searching for love, and he finds that love, and that love is actually Trevor Holmes, who he meets and once he goes to college, and he's a few years older than Jordan, and they end up developing a strong relationship and form a strong relationship, and basically they have a love story within this story. And also there's another character named Cal, who is the mentor to Jordan, and Cal is the one who is trying to protect Jordan and kind of adopts him and gives him these list of 5 gay rules to follow to survive in the gay world. And at that same time, there's different types of men who each break one of those rules without them knowing about it. And basically it's follow the 5 gay rules or you end up in the Hiding Seekers with the Hiding Seekers. Who is the intended audience? Well, this book is for young adults and above, because there's violence, there's language, there's sexual content, there's a gay relationship. It's very detailed in many different ways. So it's for young adults and above, and not for the squeamish. How did you get the idea for this story? I got the idea for this story basically in the late 90s after hearing a sad story, a true story about a young gay man who was beaten to death. And I remember I felt sad and had empathy for this young gay man who was actually about the same age that I was back then. So in a way, it kind of, as a writer, it triggered an inspiration for me to come up with a story about gay bashings. And that was basically how this story came to be. When did you start this book and why? Well, like I said, I got the ideas in the late 90s, and back then I brainstormed and wrote notes and wrote a few paragraphs and chapters, a few of them, a little bit, but for the most part it was put away for many years, and it wasn't up until about 2014 when I started rewriting it and actually wrote it all. And also I remember that back in the late 90s, I used to keep track of my dreams, and I used to write them down. And I remember there was a dream I had it wasn't about Jordan, it was about me. But I remember I incorporated a dream that I had into the hide and seekers about the man trying to, you know, kill you or put you in a box, or me fighting back and running away. And so I incorporated that dream into Jordan's story, and that was basically why and how I started it. Why do your books all take place in the 90s? The reason my books all take place in the 90s is basically because I started writing my stories back in the 90s. I was 16 years old when I started my first story, The Vendetta House. And from there, it just escalated. My first 4 stories all take place in the 90s because I was a writer. I mean, I was a teenager back then, and that's when I started writing my stories. That's why they take place in the 90s. But it's also because it's a different time frame and a different setting. Like in today's time, you know, we have the cell phones and all these electronics and all this high technology that we didn't really have back then in the 90s, and at least not like today. And it's just a different setting, different time frame, and that was my youth, my teenager years, so that's why my stories take place in the 90s. Okay, why are you on the cover? Well, for those of you who don't know, this picture is actually me taken many years ago. And basically, I wanted to find a model or a right look of a young Latino man, handsome, and I couldn't find the right model or look, stock image that I wanted. So I just decided, why don't I just use one of my own pictures, you know? And it's basically me portraying a character, a role playing. And this picture is like, it fits the cover because, you know, I look scared and I'm looking to the side and wondering what's out there. So it kind of fits this character, this book and cover. What comes next after this book? Any sequels? Yes. Actually, the next book I'm going to publish early next year in 2018 is called Pals. And actually, Jordan Pena, who's the main character in The Hiding Seekers, is in Pals. And although it's not a sequel to The Hiding Seekers, it's actually like the next chapter, the next journey, the next chapter of Jordan Pena's life, but him as an adult. And it's actually my first story that takes place in today's time. And it's basically about a group of 4 Chicano kids who are in a band. And it's Jordan Pena is their mentor and ends up being the teacher to these kids. And without giving away too much, because I'm not ready to talk about Pals in detail just yet, but basically, I just can't wait for that book to come out. I'm proud of it, like all my other 8 books. And basically, if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, feel free to email me at dplbooks@yahoo.com or check out my website at www.danielplopez.com. And yeah, so to the next book. Here's The Hiding Seekers, and we'll come back soon.